What up, everybody? Time to do another knife review. We're going to do another small fixed blade. I've been on this huge, small fixed blade kick. It's huge and it's small at the same time. And of course, it's fixed blades. And I'm sure you've seen by the title already. Today, we're going to talk about the Boker Coye Ridgeback. Now, this is made by Boker Plus. It is a Chinese import under the Boker Plus brand. This is a design by Bill Coye, and I think I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Let me know if I'm not. It may be Coye, C-O-Y-E, so I'm saying Coye. But anyway, Bill is a custom knife maker. He's very well known for this design. He started making this design in 2009. He was challenged by an Oklahoma State Patrol officer to make a small fixed blade that could be carried easily and daily. And he did. This is a fantastic little knife design. Now, I've seen some interviews. I've seen some reviews online that sort of dished this knife, that gave it a hard time, and it was, in my opinion, it was reviewed as the wrong type of usage. A lot of people will get a knife and they'll say, hey, this design sucks. I carried it and I used it for this and it just didn't work and it's just a terrible design and blah, blah, blah. You know what? A lot of these knives are oriented towards a certain type of use. Now, this is a small utility blade. This is not an outdoorsman knife. It's not a survival knife. It's not really even a self-defense knife. It's just a small daily carry utility blade. Now, in a pinch, of course, it could be used for all of that stuff, but in the end, it is just a general utility blade, and that's what I'm reviewing it as, and I think it's an excellent offering for that. So Bill Coye designed this knife in 2009, made it for years. You couldn't find one. I mean, I personally checked his website, I bet 20 times over the years, and he never had any. Now, you could find them on the custom knife dealers online if you were lucky enough to grab one soon enough, as soon as they were put in stock. But it was really popular. You just couldn't even grab one hardly. And then in 2014, Bill went back to the drawing board with this knife, redesigned it, did a bunch of subtle changes to it, mostly in the handle, and renamed this the Forerunner. He did that in 2014. Now, that does neither here nor there with this knife, because this is Boker Plus's version of the Ridgeback, and we'll just go ahead and get into that. Let's go ahead and do some specs. This is a small knife. The blade length, and I'm measuring the blade length from the tip to the forward section of the finger choil. So I'm saying all of that is blade length, not cutting edge, but just blade length. And that's 3 3/8 inches or 8.5 centimeters. Now, from the choil to the end of the handle, same length. All right. So that gives it overall, it's right at 6 3/4 inches overall. Now, the blade stock thickness, 152 thousandths of an inch or 3.9 millimeters. The blade width at its widest point, 1.26 inches or 32.6 millimeters. The handle thickness, this is a thick handle for such a small knife. It is 755 thousandths of an inch, 3/4 of an inch thick. That is hand feeling, and that's also 19.19 millimeters. All right, the handle width at the widest point is back here in the butt. It's 1.21 inches or 30.9 millimeters. The weight is 5.43 ounces or 154 grams for just the knife. All right, when you throw in the Kydex sheath, you go to 6.35 ounces total or 180 grams. So, You know what? I like this knife. I like this design, and I like the overall execution by Boker Plus. I've found Boker Plus products to be generally pretty good. Good to very good and excellent quality. The fit and finish, at least on my sample, the blade finish is a bead blast finish, is even, well done. You've got a section of jimping on the back of the blade here that is deep, well-spaced jimping. This is fantastic jimping. It's not rough in any way, but it is deep enough to where if you put some pressure on it, you feel those little jimps, the little grooves with the skin from your thumb, and it keeps you from sliding. You just it's pretty doggone good jimping, and it's very well done. The handle finish, even, everything is perfectly flush. I mean, it's not even nail catch. I'm going across right here. It's just perfectly flush. The handle scales are OD green G10. There are thick black liners that I believe are also G10. Not just vulcanized liner material. I believe they're G10. I may be wrong about that. But so you've got G10 with thick black liners, and that's a pretty decent look right there, I think. And then some black screw hardware here. That is Torx hardware. You can see the G10 is grooved, and everybody likes to say, because his name is synonymous, it's Anzo-esque. That's Jens Anzo, and he's a custom knife maker. And he started texturing his handles, although not in this same pattern. And I don't know who did it first, whether Bill did it first, or Jens did it first, or somebody else did it first, or whatever. But it's just a term to describe the texturing that's sort of like this. The texturing is very well done. The corners of each of the ridges, you can see that has been radius, so there's no hot spots. Everything really fit and finish wise, everything has been done very well, very even. The grinds are even on the blade. Well, let's talk about this blade. I have some issues with the blade on this knife. Now, first of all, I'm going to say I love the blade profile. It's this clip point with a long swedge. The swedge is 2/3 the length of the knife. When I got this knife, now granted, I bought this knife used. These run right now on Blade HQ. They are $69. Now, I paid $27 for mine shipped used. Didn't have the original packaging, and it only came with the sheath. It didn't come with the original very crappy Boker belt clip. Anybody knows the belt clip I'm talking about, good Lord, that thing is a piece of crap. But $27. So when I got this thing, it still had the factory edge on it. It had been very, very lightly used. The factory edge was still sharp, and I stropped it a little bit on some cardboard. But the factory edge had blunted the tip. It really had no tip that would catch. It had been so blunted when it was sharpened. And you can see now that I have resharpened this knife on the KME, and it is very, very sharp right now. But the second thing, and this is a problem that I have with so many knives, factory knives, mid-tech knives, and custom knives too. If you are going to make a knife, please put a sharpening choil on it. Look at this. Now, I followed the factory sharpening here. Now, I did thin the edge just a little bit, but it was sharpened straight up into the plunge. That is uglier than damn it. If they would have just taken the time to put just a 16th or an 1/8 inch sharpening choil in here, which Bill does on his custom version. His does have a sharpening choil, the original Ridgeback and the newer Forerunner. If they would have just put that sharpening choil in there, it would have been much easier to sharpen. It would be much more attractive. But that said, now I put an edge on this. I took this thing to 1500 grit. And if you've seen my KME video with my homemade cardboard Flitz metal polish strop, what I did is I reprofiled this, thinned out the edge, took it up to 1500 grit on the KME, and then stropped it, and it is a mirror edge, and it is razor sharp, and it now has a tip on it. All right, thanks to my sharpening talent, which is actually getting a little bit better. I'm pretty happy with it right now. So there were some issues with the blade. The factory edge was crap. It was crap. The edge grind was crap. And it doesn't have a sharpening choil. Other than that, the primary grinds are even. The swedge grinds are even. The overall finish is even. The Boker Plus insignia on it is well etched. You see on the back, you've got Mr. Coye's insignia. They're both dark and sharp, very well done. No issues as far as that goes. Now, see 4160, what is it, 4166? I think that's the model number. I didn't honestly look at that. That might actually be a serial number. And then on this side, you've got it marked 440C, which is common with Boker products, the German Bokers and their import models both. And this 440C sharpened up. It was even as far as heat treat hardness across the length, and it was pretty wear resistant. It took a little while to reprofile it. Not the worst I've seen, but it took a little while. Now, of course, a lot of that was I wasn't, I was down here, I was taking my time down around this plunge. But I'm pretty happy with the 440C in this, and I like 440C anyway. We all got to remember, 440C used to be the super stainless steel. It was the top of the heap. Now, sure, over the last 2.5 decades, it's sort of lost the top of the top tier. It's no longer in the top tier. It's considered a mid-grade stainless steel. But that's not because this steel got worse. It's only because new, more advanced, super alloyed steels, including the CPM process that came along, have come along and supplanted it. 440C is still a very good steel. I really like 440C. It has great corrosion resistance. It has a good amount of carbon in it. It can be hardened. You'll typically see it in the 57 to 59 Rockwell range, and that's plenty hard enough to take a very keen edge and to hold an edge fairly well. Okay, it's not a super steel, but anyway, I like 440C. And I like this little knife. Now, it is short. You're looking at 3 3/8 inches for the handle to the forward side of the choil here. So it is not a full grip. I have medium-sized hands, and this is about a 3.5 finger grip. All right? It's better than just 3 finger, but it's not a full 4 finger grip. And it feels pretty secure in the hand. You've got this deep choil here, which I love. I love that deep choil. Your finger falls in there, and when it hits the bottom, it is there. You're not going to slip out of that choil. And then you've got sort of a secondary, this dip here, then radius is into the butt end here that's real wide. So that makes it secure as far as pulling backwards on it. Now, it is 3/4 of an inch thick, the handle is. And that is a little bit thicker than what you would typically see on this size of fixed blade. Typically in the 6 3/4 inch overall length, you're going to see some flat scales that are fairly thin. You're going to be down around the 1/2 inch mark like you would be on a typical full-size folding knife. So this is a little thicker. And again, in my medium-sized hands, it feels, I gotta tell you, it's like grabbing a hold of a real tool. It is not like grabbing a hold of your typical small neck knifey sort of fixed blades that can seem not fragile, but they can be a little thin. And not really uncomfortable, but they don't feel like a real tool. This feels like a real tool. It feels like you just grabbed a hold of, a good screwdriver or a good small hammer or something that has a hand feeling rounded. You can see that the overall shape is radiused. The overall shape is radiused on this handle, and then it's got the texturing in it. And the texturing is not, right here, the texturing is not extremely deep. So there's not really any chance that it's going to cause any discomfort. I really like this handle design, and I like this little knife overall. All right, we'll set that down. Let's talk about the sheath for a minute. This is something else that I see a lot of reviewers do not like about this knife, and I don't understand why. I like this little sheath. I think the design is done very, very well. It is fairly compact. It's in fairly heavy material. It looks like about 80 thousandths Kydex to me. And the knife locks into it very well. It doesn't have hardly any play. Actually, it doesn't really have any play at all in it. It locks in very well. You'll see you've got a fantastic thumb ramp right here. That is very, very nice because you need it. What you're going to do is you're going to get, basically 2 fingers on this and 1 across the sheath. You're going to push off. As you're pushing off, you're going to close that 3rd finger into that choil, and your thumb's going to go from this thumb ramp right onto the jimping of the knife. So I think it's a pretty good design. You can see the molding on it is nice and deep. The retention is very good. I'm shaking it pretty hard right there. The retention is very good. It does have drainage built in. The only issue that I have with this knife is the issue that I have with a lot of factory Kydex knives, and that is the flange. Now this is a one-piece sheath. It's a taco type sheath that folds over, and then it's affixed on one side, in this case with eyelets that are pressed in. But this flange around here is wider than it needs to be. Okay, it is wider than it needs to be, and that gives it a little bit extra bulk. And then you see from the blade tip to the end of the sheath, it's almost 3/4 of an inch. This sheath could have been smaller all the way around. It decreased the width of this flange all the way around the perimeter here, and used smaller eyelets, slightly smaller eyelets that would have still accepted screws to affix a tech lock or anything like that. Now, this thing comes with a belt loop, and I do not have one on hand. I've owned 2 Boker Plus knives that had this belt loop, and the first thing I do is throw it away. I just instantly just throw it away. It's the flimsiest, crappiest belt loop. It's thermal molded plastic in a sort of a C-shaped, and it's just crap. It is just crap. The sheath is pretty decent, but that belt loop is crap. And what I use it with, right now, this is my car knife. It's very compact. I just slip it down in between the seat and the center console. It's right there next to my seat belt where my hand instinctually can go if I need it. It's small enough to where it's not going to alarm any law enforcement. There's no reason to have a super big pig stick or battle sword knife in your car. If you live in that bad of an area, you better be carrying a firearm, which I do, even though I don't live in a bad area. But, you know, a super big knife like that makes police officers worry. So I carry this knife. It's perfect size for utility. It's nice heavy stock. It's strong. You could pry with this knife if you needed to. It carries a good bit of the thickness out towards the edge here, or out towards the tip, I'm sorry. And it's a stout little knife, I got to tell you, it is. And you can grab a hold of the handle. I mean, it is hand feeling. If you needed to pry with it, you have that option in this knife, even though I have a pry bar in the car, so I probably wouldn't do that. But it makes for a perfect little car carry knife. Now, as far as the sheath goes, you can take and affix a loop to it and carry it IWB. You could affix a piece of paracord to it and carry it ripcord style. You can affix a tech lock to it. The eyelets are spaced at least for a full-size tech lock, because I've had one on here, to carry it in a horizontal position, small of back. And it's a little bit thick for that type of carry for me. I'm sort of a smaller frame guy, and anything bulky around my waist does tend to cause some discomfort, especially sitting down. But carried IWB, say in an appendix carry, it's a pretty decent carry. And then, of course, I've got this one in my car. Now, let's just go ahead and close this out. I believe I've said about everything there is to say about this knife. I like this knife. I like the way it looks. I like the design. I like the sheath. The only issues, the sheath could be a little more refined, but this is a $69 factory knife. It's an import, so I'm not expecting greatness. I'm pleasantly surprised with the sheath itself. As far as the knife goes, I love everything about it. The fit and finish is pretty much perfect on it. The design is fantastic. Of course, the factory edge was crap, and it doesn't have a sharpening choil, which I wish it had. So, overall, I'm going to recommend this knife if you want a stout feeling, but not too blocky. You know, it doesn't feel like a sharpened pry bar. It does have a decently high enough grind to give you a fairly thin edge, and if you reprofile the factory edge on it, it's even better. And it is a flat grind, guys. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. But you know what? I like this as a little utility knife, as a little carry knife when I'm carrying my firearm. Carry it on the offside in case I need to get somebody off of me. And I think that if you take into account its size and its design, that you will be very pleased with it at the $69 price point. I am certainly pleased at the $27 price point I paid for it. All right, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to view my video. As always, God bless all of you, and we will talk to you later.